don't know, we're in a new spot, but welcome to the Aggressively Healthy Podcast. I'm Dr. Marko Lujic.
I'm Mike Ranfone.
And this is the Aggressively Healthy Podcast powered by
RTS Health.
God bless. Listen, so last week we got deep into like the VO2 world. Actually, before we even get into that, we're in a new studio. Any comments on the new studio? Because it's a little bit more painted. We have some AC in here. We've upgraded a touch, I think. We got a carpet on the floor. But let me tell you something. The reason we're in this new little area is the place is rapidly expanding. Can we talk about that quick? And I know we've updated you on some things, but here's some more coming.
I think it's worth mentioning that we're pretty much fully moved in. Like there's some decorative stuff that we have to do. Obviously, you know, for the podcast itself, we need some background ornaments. But if from a facility standpoint, the gym is cooking. We have physical therapy moved in. They have 3 full-time providers. The health side of things is pretty much geared up, ready to go. We're seeing patients and clients and members 24/7 at this point.
All the time.
So, and we have a couple things that aren't finished yet that we'll talk about hopefully within the next 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, where the gym was, it still is currently that location. The expansion didn't leave Hamden. The expansion didn't leave the boundaries of this area, and the new building with an RTS Health label on it is across the parking lot. So we've essentially developed this kind of arena of health, and the whole goal is to have that continue to grow, and the more people we can invite into it.
Yeah, which is probably the biggest indicator of why VO2 max isn't the end-all be-all.
Yeah.
Like this is the manifestation in reality of why you can't just have a single data point driving any bus.
No matter what.
And we'll review stuff, but I think it's worth noting because if it was simple as one blood test, one VO2 test, we wouldn't need 30,000 square feet of functional employment and facility and build out
to prove something, which is how many milliliters per kilogram per minute of oxygen you might be able to consume.
Yeah.
Now, if we think about that fact, last week we reviewed a ton of data in terms of analyses. So like, how do we calculate it? How do we look at VO2 in a way where is it not purely scientific, like, oh, this is a data point we adjust around? More in reality of the world being it's a data point as a measurement, which we then use with subjectivity against other data points to prove or deny that you're healthy or not, which is an interesting lead into, like, last week I talked about the null hypothesis and what science tries to prove. But a null hypothesis usually tries to prove like a causal relationship between two things or a single variable. And I just don't understand how science in general, you guys in the exercise world really were already way ahead of the game with that, where it's like, hey, I want to do a bicep curl, but I have tendonitis here. So you got to do like 8 other things to alleviate that. Where the science world, for some reason, can't get out of their own way in terms of siloed approach, meaning, oh, your heart is bad? We'll make your heart so good independent of the rest of your body. Like somebody could literally be in a wheelchair, not speaking, not looking, not reading, not able to do anything else. But if their heart's okay, their cardiologist is perfectly happy, right? So how do we get people to assess in a VO2-driven world now, which, listen, I like VO2. We like VO2. And it is a really good, probably currently maybe one of the best metrics for cardiovascular health.
Sure.
But how do we get people to realize like that single measurement is not going to hinge anything else in terms of your medical care unless it makes sense with everything else?
Well, it reminded me like last week when we were talking about how much emphasis when we were growing up we put in the SAT test. And for some reason, it was like you could be a decent student, but get a really good SAT and get into the school you want.
Yep.
So to me, it's like, does that mean that we should, if a bad student exists, they should just study to take a test?
Right. Yeah.
Probably not.
At all.
Then they're just really good at that one test and don't have critical thinking skills.
Doctors.
Like the meta skill of learning is now unaddressable.
Doctors.
Right, but that's where it comes. It's like, okay, if it's a blood, like if it's a hand grip test or if it's a VO2 test, it's like, so if I'm just good at that one thing, I'm going to live forever.
Right.
But it's so easy to sell a simple story now. And I think that's like where the marketing really skews everyone's, I don't know, emphasis or.
Yeah. And listen, guys, if we stumble during this podcast and we misspeak, and blah, 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 we don't edit it.
Yeah.
And the reason we do that is because this is us. And I think that's kind of the packaging and the inner value of what you're delivering. Independent of the packaging, we want to deliver a really good value. But the book, meeting its cover and meeting the content, is kind of a VO2, right? Because the resultant VO2 max output is great, but that might be the marketing pitch for that person's health. But internally, you could have failing organs. You could still output a high VO2 with a lot of other metabolic irritations in your body, totally. Right? So there's a lot of things that potentially training just for the VO2 could cause some harm. So in kind of looking back, we went over genetics and all these other things and variables going into a VO2. In your mind, as a directly root-driven, you started out from exercise roots and developed into a healthcare professional by learning the basis of what you do to get healthy, which is eat well, move, and move properly. What is your take on your input and what you think variability can be in terms of adjusting a VO2? So is it purely just like cardio? Is it purely just weightlifting? Is it pure? Because listen, somebody recently, we saw an ad online that they were advertising like a VO2 training thing, right? I don't know if that's the right approach, and let's discuss that maybe. I'm not going to give my opinion on that too much because I think this is more exercise science world where the physiology and what can be good or bad in that training regimen to get to that VO2 result could end up in. So question being asked, what would you think the best way to approach somebody who walks in and says, I want to make my VO2 better?
For what? So there's a legitimate argument for a competitive athlete, let's say a triathlete or a cyclist that says, hey, I think my limiting factor for being in the top 5% of my age demographic is my VO2 max. I would say that is a very pointed outcome, a very specific outcome that needs very specific testing to actually see if that is the limiting factor to the outcome measure that you want. If you are a 48-year-old woman who's never trained, hasn't eaten well, and is 30 pounds overweight, I don't think I'm going to extract much value to make an informed decision about how to train that person. And that's, again, from my perspective, because I know if we get her to lose some weight, if we get her to have a better relationship with food, create a better awareness around nutritional well-being, and get her in the gym 3-4 times a week, the VO2 is going to be a side effect of all those changes. And then again, it becomes a proxy measure of longevity.
Now, Mike just said something really, really interesting to me. A side effect. We look at the result as the goal of the process. I believe I don't look at result anymore. Maybe I haven't even said this to you. I stopped being like, oh, that's the result. I started being like, instead of the old school me that was like, hey, I can handle any negativity, meaning like whatever beats me up, I'll just get through it. No, now in my brain, I'm like, I have a process I'm going to go through. It's going to be, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to eat well, I'm going to be nice to my kids, my wife, my family, like all of these things. And if you do that, the result, no matter what it is, then you get results that you deal with that are great. And yeah, you can deal with any result from that.
Yeah.
Because those processes, by default, like Mike said, the side effect is going to be a positive result. Like there's no negativity to movement and exercise. And I'm having a little bit of a deja vu because I think early in our podcasting career, this topic came up where it's almost like the result of what you want to get to ends up with a million more exponential results if you just focus on the process of health.
Yeah.
So I think VO2, as you said, can be a measurement used to then say, okay, you've made good progress or not. But I don't think we should hinge anything directly on just that. Now, the kind of interesting thing is there's always the debate. Do you train zone 2? Do you train resistance? Do you train cardio? All of these other factors in terms of going into these and trying to improve it. What do you ask out of your client in terms of their best approach to what a VO2 and the results to them? Because they could have results that then go down, up. It's variable depending on their training. But how do you then encourage them to continue to push through that process to get the result on the VO2?
It's interesting because the human body is so adaptable. And the cool thing is, if you're just starting off, almost anything gives you positive benefit.
Yep.
Like, I'll track back to the comment, something is better than nothing when it comes to exercise. So if you haven't trained or trained consistently, just training consistently is your best option.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It will yield benefit, and you will lose weight. You will become more fit. Your work capacity will go up. Your strength will increase. The neurological, biological, and physiological processes are all living behind that.
Yeah.
The problem is when it stops, because your body will adapt to that, you receive no greater benefit.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that's not a bad thing either, because at some point you do kind of want to think about this maintenance thing. But it's also the personal preference of like, well, I still want to lose another 20 pounds. I still want to go run a marathon. I still want to lift 300 pounds. So again, this comes back to the more specific the outcome, the more specific the training has to be. So that's where in sport world, it's called GPP, general physical preparation. And then it goes into SPP and then SPP2 and then all these other like phrases that don't really mean anything for the general fitness person. But that's how I would look at it. So you're a great example.
But you know what? Hold on that. Don't lose your track of thought. You just named like 3 very expansively, scientifically sounding things, SPPs and all these things. You do think about exercise like that.
For everyone.
Yeah, but the general population doesn't. And we can even get into this later down the road, but like I think people need to know how much thought goes into that exercise. And we'll discuss that later. Sorry to take away from your thing.
No problem.
But the stages of progression through
100%.
So like when Mike's looking at a bench press, he's not looking at just a bar moving. It's like significantly more physiologic points to appear.
Well, you actually commented on this maybe 2 weeks ago. It's like you wanted people to stop thinking about muscle as just like a structural thing.
Yeah.
And you talked about like what it lights up your brain.
It
changes your hormones. It changes all these other things.
Yep.
And we just say, oh, well, you put 20 pounds on your bench press. It's like there's so much behind that.
Yeah, the endocrine system benefit is huge.
And what doesn't benefit? Like, does your muscle get better? Does your ligament get better? Does your tendon get better? Does your bone get better? Yeah, and that's just tissue level stuff. So
I had a guy, just in terms of generalized health, somebody recently had an injury to a part of their body, and their doctor told them to take it easy and don't move for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So the anti-VO2.
Yeah.
One big thing I have a question for in terms of VO2. Do you think there should be a little bit of a fear? Because we always talk about maintenance. And people then with the VO2 could be like, well, I want to make it better. I want to make it better. I want to make it better. Now, you're going to get the outliers on the far end that will make it better, but the process of them making it better will be overdoing it to the point where they probably almost become detrimental to their own health, right? It's like the extreme in the bodybuilding world that ruined a lot of science for us because we didn't know the science at the time. People overdid it. So the whole Peter Attia VO2 world of like being the pure thing we're chasing, I think that's more of a marketing. Whereas we are the type of people, I believe, I'm speaking for myself, but I think Mike's in the same statement on this on a VO2. If you walk in here and your VO2 is like 42, which is pretty damn good, between a 40 and 45 is pretty amazing for anybody in middle age. If it's there and it's good, and we know your health parameters are maintained and that VO2 stays the same, you've essentially done a really good job metabolically if it doesn't regress. So how do we convince people, or how do we educate them that the process is to get to a result, but that result doesn't always have to be a quote unquote improvement in terms of like looking up to something. It can be what we talk about, which is that maintenance, because then you end up stuck, which I love right now, in the process, and all the benefit is just the weird side effects.
Yeah.
Like I was yesterday, we were at lacrosse, and I like jogged up a hill, I ran around, I like said hi to 30 people, I walked, and then I sat and I was like, whoa. I just bounced around. I ran up a hill, and it didn't bother me at all. I was like, this is pretty neat as an adult because
side effect.
There was a dad, a couple seats next to me, who to get out of his chair, it was like this, like, you know what I mean? Like a huge amount of effort. And the guy's kid is 8, and he looked like he was 70. Almost to the point I was going to be like, are you the grandpa? But I heard them say, hi, son. So I think the side effects of what we can get out of learning to really embrace the process, which I got to say is you're the entire world of like process side effect as a benefit, right? And I think that's a big promotion. I am promoting it. Ranfone training. Like that's where this entire RTS Health started, right? It started in a gym based on a process. And that process was based on the fact that you were willing to endure a process to build a gym that was difficult. The result you really never probably knew, right? You were probably just like, I'm just going to train people.
Yeah.
And then you trained athletes, then you trained adults, then you trained general fitness, and now it's more pure metabolic medicine training. So I think if people can understand, embrace that process, the resultant side effects will be positive, and that result you're looking for will end up becoming what you end up getting.
Yeah.
Little break. We're going to try doing these little like commercial breaks, I think, right? Why not? And everything we've been talking about today is exactly the problem RTS was built to solve, right? So as Mike has said before we open the segment, if a VO2 was the only thing you need to get to become healthy, well, we could do it in a room that's 8 feet by 8 feet. But at the end of the day, we know to supply people with proper healthcare, we need all of it. And what's that entail here at RTS Health? We're back. We had a little blip, a little microphone issue. So what exactly, now that it's not just an 8x8 room, what exactly are we at RTS Health trying to offer to people and show them what we can do for them?
Fundamentally, we want to be the most comprehensive healthcare service, especially skewed towards a proactive healthcare mindset.
Yes.
And that's why it does take a village. That's why we have different people, different pieces of labor, different skills, different representations of a population. And I think we do a very good job of solving a lot of their problems. And again, because of the vast network that we do possess, we can refer out.
Always.
Because we don't have to own everything.
Yep.
And when it's so client-centric, when like the only way that we win is if you win,
yep,
we can't be the only ones who can solve these things.
No.
So whether we're bringing in a special nutritionist or an orthopedist or whatever that's not in the immediate family,
yep,
we do that.
Yeah.
And that's because, again, we operate with the best interests of the end user.
Yep.
That's it.
And here's the difference. We also have your health in mind. So if we do get an orthopedist involved and they say, oh, your right foot is broken, guess what? We take that right foot. We know that it's still attached to the rest of your body. We're going to make sure metabolically you remain healthy to help that foot heal. And then I got a question. Do you think that foot will heal better or worse if the rest of the body continues actively building metabolic energy through muscular movement and the endocrine system to help the piece of body that's broken recover?
If you think about like what's the best benefit of weight training at a high level, it's that you have a higher ability to absorb and adapt to stress properly. So what is a trauma? What is a surgery? You know, it's stress. It's acute stress. So you're going to tell me that if you're in worse shape or allow your shape to decrease as you're in an injured state, it should get better?
Yeah.
And we know this from working with pro athletes. Those guys, everyone wants to work with them. Why? Because you can do anything and it works.
So I always had an argument at the hospitals. There used to be a policy where there were like never events. And one of them was a urinary tract infection. So insurance companies would not pay the entire bill for anyone's stay if they got a urinary tract infection from a catheter that the hospital put in. And I used to always say this because post-op, people would end up in the ICU and their families would come in and ask, why are they in the ICU? And everybody would be like, we don't really know, something with their lungs. We had to intubate them and now they have a pneumonia. So it must be their lungs and the overall. No, here's what happened. And now I had this epiphany too, now that I'm outside the hospital looking in. You take somebody who's under such metabolic stress, you then go cut them wide open rearrange anything, fix their body, whether it's a trauma, orthopedic, belly, whatever. All of their energy, which they already had none, they already came in with an empty gas tank, no reserve, terrible cardiovascular fitness, horrendous metabolic health. You do that to them, what do you think is going to happen to their lung? By default, they cannot properly defend themselves from anything.
Compromised.
They are compromised. You take the same well-trained human, life athlete who eats well, sleeps well, has a really good insulin sensitivity curve, walks into that OR with an albumin of 5.1, a total protein of 7.8, with a BUN of 18, who actively exercises every morning and resistance trains, and you do the same surgery, guess what? There's a reason Navy SEALs, you can shoot them 100 times and they still shoot back. There's a reason the guy at the bus stop that gets off and gets punched in the face dies, right? There's two totally separate metabolic demands for recovery. One is really set up to recover and heal. The other is not.
Right.
And I think we need to look at healthcare like that. And like Mike said, the only way you can accomplish that is here. Because as a physician, I could easily, and it happens constantly, trapped in an office with data, telling people what to do, and almost lose focus a little bit on the fact that there is physical movement around me. And then I have to remind myself, oh, it doesn't have to all be chemical. This can also be solved physically. But if you're not in the arena to do that, you can't really do it. I'd also like to specifically say, so that there are no issues, and we always are here to invite. Everybody is welcome, male, female, young, old, any race, any color, any human with any ailment, any pathology, any physical, musculoskeletal, metabolic. We want to help them all. The services we provide from the medical end of it are biometric testing, lab data, lab review, DEXAs, and from a training standpoint, these are very abbreviated. We offer
physical training, physical therapy, resistance training, power development, endurance training, nutrition services.
Everything.
I mean, yeah.
With a background of all professional life athletes. Everybody is striving to become better, even themselves. And I think that environment, trainer down, is a big deal.
And it also, I think, you know, one of the things that we talked about, like the creation of all this, was what do people not get in your normal healthcare service?
Yep.
So let's just use the stereotypical example of you see your GP once a year. Let's say you get 15 full minutes with that person, right? Now, they will spend more time with you in one session than they will with their GP in 5 years.
Yep.
Think about that.
Yeah.
So you're getting 5x from one interaction with you. And it's probably the depth and actual span and scope is very different. But then you get to do that 4 more times.
Yep.
And
then you get more.
And then you get more. And now they also interact with your team,
Yep.
your physiology specialist,
Yep.
the PA.
Yep.
Then they see the nutritionist.
Yep.
Then they see their accountability coach.
Yep.
So you look at the touch points that we offer in just 1 year, you're probably talking about 25 or 30 years of touch points in a normal medical facility.
And I always get it. Some of the people here are like, hey, Marko, I want to schedule another sit down with you, maybe a 15-minute chat. And sometimes I got to remind them, I'm like, we talk every day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you're also
in the gym.
Mix.
Yeah. And it's cool for me because I get to see a lot of metabolic product that they don't even know I'm really realizing, like the movement curves, watching people feel better. You can see it in the gym.
When someone shows you their bicep and be like, look at that.
Yeah. And it's neat to see.
Yeah.
It's nice to be around. We did a little review of some literature. In 2024, there was a paper put out called The Assessment of Maximal Oxygen Uptake, VO2 max, in athletes and non-athletes assessed in a sports physiology laboratory. This was done at the Physiology Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Medical Sciences, at the Patil School of Medicine in Mumbai, and Internal Medicine Madras Medical College. There's a couple other places mentioned. It is a peer-review article. So, abstract, athletes' physical prowess plays a crucial role in their ability to succeed in any sporting endeavor. What essentially it comes down to is this. This entire paper is based on athletes versus non-athletes. It was pretty much the most easily recognizable, just black and white, right? So I do a lot of things in terms of health assessment with people, and I tell you that I do not believe time and pathology equal each other. That's a trick the medical world put on us. And with that in mind, in terms of black and white, I say there are babies born dead and there's people who live to 122. That's a pretty black and white scenario. The black and white scenario here is there's athletes that train like athletes, and then there are people that don't play sports. Pretty easy to discern. And what was the conclusion? The study showed significantly higher VO2 max levels in athletes of both genders compared to their age and sex-matched controls upon exercise on a treadmill and cycle ergometer. This study underscores the significance of better cardiorespiratory fitness in athletes than non-athletes, giving pertinent insights about their aerobic capacity, which is precisely measured and expressed in terms of VO2. So a couple things here. One, the black and white. The second thing we can discuss is aerobic versus anaerobic, what all that means, and then the clear distinction between somebody who trains something physical and somebody who trains nothing. How much easier can we state it that working out will help your VO2? So back to the question, a paper like this, when we analyze, is easy to say, that makes sense. How do we translate this to the mother who's at home with the kids, who runs around all day and says, well, I'm moving all day? How do we then tell her that that movement potentially without the rest of your metabolic health isn't the same as maybe training in a gym or a resistance training environment? And how do we impose these thoughts onto the population to realize that life training requires some resistance?
Well, I'll actually use like things like the VO2 max test and hand grip test as what they really are, which means they're proxies for the outcome that you want.
Yep.
Right. So it's very similar to saying this does not cause, but there's a high correlation between looking at one thing and then not knowing exactly what else is there,
right,
but creating the effect that you want. So for that person who doesn't weight train specifically or have any like dedicated or purposeful activity outside of moving around, walking, chasing kids around, whatever, that was way better than not doing those things.
Yep.
But is it optimal for what you want out of your life or from your health?
Yeah.
And that's where you start to scale these things appropriately for that individual. So if they say, hey, I'm really time constrained, I don't have more than 2 times a week at 45 minutes. Well, okay, we have something to work with to be better than 0 times a week. You know, so like we're not saying don't play with your kids and don't go on nice walks, but there is something else out there that will give you a different benefit that will be complementary to all the things that we'll have to look at some point in your life.
Yes.
And that's how I try to like rationalize with people that like what they could be doing. You can always find an improvement. You don't have to be sick to get better.
No, and I think we're all just kind of microcosms expanding into macroscopic things, meaning like if the human body, if the liver, the brain, the heart, and all these other organ systems aren't working, it's the same as if that human is like, well, I don't have the time to work out, but I'm doing all these other things. It's like you got to kind of get all of it in coordination because it all matters, right? So if one piece of the body's broken and one piece of your lifestyle is really broken, the effect is the same. If my heart's bad and my lungs are really good, my lungs don't work as well because my heart's fucked up and it can't pump the right amount of blood in or out. That's how you get congestive heart failure or pulmonary edema, right? You have a congestive heart fail, then you get back up into the lungs and that causes problems. So really your lungs weren't the diseased issue, it was the heart. So if you have an entire lifestyle that's wonderful, but every Friday night you go home and just crank 50 beers, well, guess what? The rest of the lifestyle doesn't really matter because the rest of the lifestyle will become contaminated from that one event. It's a bigger picture, I believe. And I think exactly what you're saying. These people walk in, I want VO2 training to circle back, and guess what that person does? Get on a bike or zone 2 or blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
With the target of VO2, but to potentially missing the mark totally because like maybe that woman or that man or that kid doesn't actually fit with running or cycling, and maybe they just need to lift weight or do jump squats or I don't know.
Lose 10 pounds.
Yeah, lose 10 pounds or whatever it is. But that approach I think needs to be customized. We talked about it a little bit last time in terms of the customization of what you do here. We can go beyond that. We had a client who listens to the podcast closely ask us about movement and movement dynamics with like femur length on squats and things like that. Can you take that a little bit further in terms of anatomic abilities, in terms of actual range of motion and what it means to the exercise component? And I know this is a big topic, and I know this probably won't be answered in 2 minutes, but I think the perspective of it to lead into maybe another segment where we can discuss these into more specifics would be nice, just for people to know how much thought goes into each movement, independent of me and you maybe squatting on the same day, but both of our squats are going to be done completely different.
Yeah. I will try to put it in the vernacular where someone says, I've squatted for years, and every time I squat, I hurt my back. And now we can kind of look at that as like, is the technique itself wrong? Like, did they learn how to, let's say, back squat incorrectly, or in a way where their back is exposed to injury? And once you get an injury, the greatest indicator of an injury is a prior injury, and you just keep on hurting your back because A, your technique sucks, or B, what you're talking about, back squatting isn't the greatest way to express the movement of squatting for you.
Right.
And that might mean that you have a long torso or short legs or whatever other driver behind your movement signature actually is. So when we look at someone, we look at it objectively from a movement perspective. And I mean, we have multiple different tests to kind of figure out what the best thing is or what your maybe deficits are. And then we try to place you with a representation of that movement category. So like what you talked about, maybe you can get away with back squatting, but back squatting for me, because my shoulder's not great, I don't have enough external rotation to hold a heavy weight. I always hurt my shoulder when I back squat.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, can I front squat? Can I Zercher squat? Can I goblet squat? Because we do believe that squatting is a very important movement that everyone should be able to express, unless as you get older, you don't care about getting off the toilet.
Right.
Right? Like squatting exists in everyday life.
Yeah.
So I don't care what your leg length is. We have to train the squat
Stand
for
up.
you
Yep.
to appropriately navigate that movement expression for the longest time possible.
Yeah.
Right? And we can look at every basic movement, whether it be a lunge, a pull-up, a chin-up, whatever it may be, and figure out what the best fit for your unique movement expression is.
Yep. And I think I want a moment of that movement signature talk. I haven't heard that one before. Is that, did you come up with that?
No, I mean, that's big in sports science.
Oh.
Like if you had like a motion capture of someone
Yeah.
sprinting, and then you look at like, say, Usain Bolt
Yeah.
versus Michael Johnson versus whatever,
yeah.
they're all some of the fastest guys in the world. But when you look at and they all sprint,
Totally different
but
styles.
the way that they do it is completely different. So this is representative of the self-organization of
Yeah.
the body
Yeah.
to figure out how to produce the best result for the task asked of
I'm
them.
pumped into movement signature. I think I might make like a metabolic signature.
Here's another great way, like pitching.
Yeah.
How many different expressions of pitching is there?
I mean, a bajillion.
Not infinite.
Arm angle from here to here.
Where they get their power from.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, don't
I'm
throw.
joking. I'm joking.
Where they get their power from. Where maybe why someone is really good at curveball.
Yeah.
And someone's really good at a splitter. Right? Like I don't know.
Yeah. That, I mean,
But there's a natural selection to some of these things too. Like
yeah.
no matter what, this shoulder isn't throwing a ball.
No.
You know what I mean?
Right.
At any point in my life.
Yeah, and no matter what, I'm not going to be in the NBA independent of my ability to shoot a basketball.
Especially not with that attitude.
You know what I'm
but
saying? Yeah. But it sometimes does come down to just limiting
100%.
factors. I also think we should just quickly touch on that aerobic versus anaerobic thing. And we could get deeper into this later, but I don't know if everybody out there actually knows what it means, right? So there's times where your body moves in a split second where it does not need per se oxygen, and it uses just sugar, whatever's in your body in terms of carb load. And then potentially it gets more oxygen delivered after that initial initiation of movement. And then that oxygen will then produce activity more, but then you can convert into anaerobic activity once you get to a level where you have to start breaking down other things to try to make energy. So at the end of the day, the biggest driving factor I think that everybody just needs to know, your VO2 means whatever, your aerobic, anaerobic, blah, 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 blah. The input and output are all that the human consumer needs to know, which is how fast can you breathe to keep up with how fast your heart is pumping, with how much your muscles need oxygen to do the job you're asking them to do. So if you go to the bottom of a staircase and you walk up it and you cannot make it up the staircase, that system is not working. So it's either you're not breathing in enough oxygen, you can't get the oxygen to your cells and the cytoplasm didn't process glucose, and your mitochondria are not currently processing energy well enough in terms of their production of ATP, or you're not getting rid of lactic acid enough because you can't breathe fast enough to keep up with the heart rate that you've gotten yourself into with the demand for oxygen. That is a closed system. In, out. It's the same way in, same way out for both oxygen and CO2. Internally, what's going on is the issue. So I think in terms of that assessment, you just got to realize, like, when you get out of breath at a physical activity, remind yourself that you can't do more. So if you're walking upstairs and that exhausts you, that's not good. Because if you get to the top of those stairs and then you need to do something else, you won't be able to. And it really comes down to your lungs and your heart not being able to keep up with each other. I think it's got to get really explained to people that health, I believe, is how we're going to achieve wealth, right? Like this whole happiness, this whole mental health thing. And it's kind of scary because we talk about VO2s, we talk about all these physical things, but like mental health crisis is a real thing these days too. And we talked about it last week in terms of the endocrine system and the muscles helping your brain. But I also think there's an aspect to community. And we've talked about this a little more in terms of me being the quote unquote doctor, whatever that means. I don't ever want people to call me a doctor. I don't like them calling me anything but Marko. Why? Because I am in the community and I'm part of it. And I think you should also remind people that that's a big deal. And I think part of the RTS Health system, healthcare facility, whatever we want, is that community. So back to the whole thing of the entire thing needs to be working well. Let's talk about our community and how well it can work to provide an environment, right, where your metabolic enhancements, because you're involved in all these things, but your physicality of it is in that same group. So we never lose sight of any of it. Your vision for the future, you know, now that we're at the end of the episode, we've talked about it a lot. What do you think we're going to be able to do moving forward in terms of our progress with healthcare?
Well, I want to hit on that idea of like you being part of the community and why we have such a really high regard for our community members. Because just like you can pick a study that shows VO2 max is associated with longevity, blah, blah, blah. You know what another really big factor for longevity is? Loneliness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
That's probably just as strong of an
maybe
indicator.
Worse.
Yeah. Right? So I think it's really important, especially when people are trying to change themselves, because change is hard, period.
Yeah.
You know what really helps? A good environment.
Yep.
Good relationships. Yep. A good community. A supportive community.
Yeah.
So, like, that's why I think we have both expressed our deep gratitude to the people that, you know, use our services, but really want not only to be a part, but want to contribute to the community that we're building. And that is employees, that is patrons, that is customers, members, so on and so forth. So if I had to think about the vision, it comes down to the people that we want to interact with, and that people want to interact with. And if we can expand that, there's no way we can lose.
No, and I think the whole vision is just health as the priority, and
that's the common thread.
Yeah, and I said this last week too. Like in terms of a religion, if health were the religion and that was the process, there'd be a lot less angry people. Yeah, because you'd be too tired to fight. You know what I mean? Like, everybody goes out and does 1,000 push-ups in a day. You'd have a world that was trying to do 1,000 push-ups and like 10 people would get through the day. You know what I mean? But nobody would be punching each other because you're wasting so much energy on yourself trying to get healthy that you don't worry what everybody else around you has. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits of this. I do believe real mental health with yourself is achieved when you are healthy and when your body feels really good. I would venture to say most mentally disturbed humans, whether it's a pathologic disease that's driven from chemical, drug use, whatever in between. But people whose brains aren't working really well, their body's probably not working well either. It all goes hand in hand. Marcus is here once again, tearing it up. I think we're at the end of the episode, huh? We got a couple minutes. Closing remarks. We are not saying that VO2 is bad. We're not saying that it's the only thing to look at. And we are agreeing it is an incredibly good indicator of cardiovascular fitness. But we want you to know, and what we are really trying to push, is that it takes everything, not just your VO2. It could be your DEXA. It could be your sodium level. It could be your hormone level. It could be the squats you're doing.
How about resting heart rate?
Or resting heart rate, and all of it matters. Next episode, I think we'll get a little bit deeper into the movement protocols and kind of how Mike breaks down more of those movements in terms of the direct question of squatting, but others for body types, ages, and all whatever else it might take.
Goals.
Outcomes,
Yeah.
and we can go down that road of physical approach. So if anybody out there has any questions on any exercise programming you've been given, where maybe you feel like it's not the right movement, but that person has told you, no, you have to back squat, and you did get injured, let us know, because we really want to try to avoid that. And here we're trying to practice exercise physiology and medicine in a way that's beneficial to everybody. Thank you guys for joining us. Aggressively Healthy, Marko Lujic.
Mike Ranfone. Have a
See
great
you guys next week.